American history has recorded the point of view of the colonists, but the colonists were not the only ones. There were three distinct cultures, two others, native and African. We evolved together, in the same place, the same time. It is easy to forget. We should never forget. In the aftermath of Bacon's rebellion in 1676, tribes like the Pamunkey, led by Queen Kakakoska, allied with the crown, but suffered attacks from rebels. The 1700s saw them struggling to maintain autonomy under colonial oversight. Chickahominy families often lived in dual worlds, working in colonial economies while sustaining tribal councils and ceremonies. Native women often appear in colonial records as intermediaries, like Kakakoeski negotiating treaties, yet oral traditions emphasize their role as keepers of stories and continuity. Even after the death of Chief Powhatan Wahunsonacock in 1618, his Confederacy's descendants carried forward stories of creation. The Pamunkey maintained a reservation along the York River, a James tributary, and continued fishing and farming practices, resisting full assimilation. By treaty, Powhatan descendants were considered subjects of the English crown, but their rights were curtailed. Laboring for the plantations came with potential of land grants. Land ownership did not include rights to freely testify in court or travel through lands then occupied by colonists. Despite colonization, the tribes were not erased. Villages were strategically placed along fertile banks for farming the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. For tribes of the Powhatan Confederacy, the river was sacred. It was used for purification rituals, councils, and rites of passage. As the Virginia colony expanded, the natives were either forced out of their homelands or they adapted by blending traditional practices with new realities ensuring survival. Today, tribes like the Pamunkey and Chickahominy remain in Virginia, still tied to the river that carried their ancestors' stories. The James was remembered in native oral traditions as a place of creation, migration, and transformation. Names like Powhatan carried spiritual meaning, not just political identity. The year 1700 marks a turning point. Virginia had survived its early struggles, stabilized politically, and was prospering economically. Yet, this prosperity rested on enslaved labor and land dispossession from native peoples, shaping the colony's identity for generations. Wealthy planters dominated politics, while poorer farmers, often in the backcountry, had little influence. This imbalance would later fuel unrest. The shift from indenture to slavery and based on race created a rigid racial hierarchy, laying the foundation for centuries of inequality. Religion, the Church of England, was the official religion, and attendance was legally required. Churches were central to community life. Native relations. By 1700, native peoples had been devastated by disease and warfare. The Powhatan Confederacy, once dominant, had been reduced to small tributary tribes. Willie Lynch, a plantation owner in the West Indies, thought he had a foolproof method of controlling his forced African laborers. In 1712, some fine gentlemen planters from Virginia invited him to come share his knowledge. They all gathered on the banks of the James River.
Greetings, gentlemen. I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest, and still the oldest, methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. You are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree, a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings. You are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields, too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires, your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems, I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that, if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for, at least, 400 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family, or your overseer, can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences, and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's there, only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex. Sizes of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust / is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adulation, respect or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on, and will become self-refueling, and self-generating, for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have white servants and overseers, who distrust all blacks. But it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely, for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen.
When our 5 times great-grandfather William James Gates was born in Bermuda Hundred, not far from where the James River met the Appomattox River, his family was surrounded by other families that had been in Virginia from early on. There were Archers, Randolphs, Ishams, and Kennans. Most notably, there were quite a few descendants of Francis Eppes I. There was also a less influential family named Jefferson. In the year of 1710, Susanna Eppes, daughter of Edward Eppes and Mary Green, was born in Westover Parish, Prince George. Susanna's great-grandfather, John, was the oldest son of Francis Eppes I. She was still a teenager when she married William Gates in November of 1627. Their first son, Edward, our 4 times great-grandfather, was born the following year. Susanna and William would have 5 more children. William, born 1730, Mary, born 1733, Elizabeth, born 1734, Lucy, born 1740, and James, born in 1741. The family would build a new home in Dale Parish in 1734. The Reverend George Robertson had sailed from Scotland in 1696, married Mary Worsham, and became the deacon of Bristol Parish in Bermuda Hundred. He had arrived in the colony with a kinsman, Geoffrey Robertson. Geoffrey and Elizabeth had a son, George, born in 1715, the same year as William's little sister Jane. Geoffrey would marry Jane. Another grandfather, James Geoffrey Robertson, son of George Robertson and Jane Gates, was born in 1736. Daniel Duggar, another 5 times great-grandfather, was born in 1696. He was the grandson of a man who had been hanged for participating in Bacon's rebellion. He would marry Mary Scarborough. Daniel and Mary Duggar would have a daughter, Lydia, born in 1627, the same year as our great-grandfather Edward Gates. She would have a story with a man named Marmaduke. Another 5 times great-grandfather, Joseph Perrin, a French Huguenot, was also born in Virginia in 1700. The Perrin family would later be associated with the McWilliams family. David McWilliams' father, Andrew, was born in Virginia in 1710, the same year as Susanna Eppes. His wife's name was Agnes. David McWilliams and his wife Rebecca would have 3 daughters during the Revolution. 2 of them, Sarah and Hannah, would end up in our Gates family tree. Across the ocean in Heidelberg, Germany, Johann Handel Diel Wentz was born in 1728 to a devout Moravian family. In 1736, Martha Eppes, daughter of Francis IV, married a barrister and slave trader named John Wales. In 1748, their daughter, also named Martha, was born. Peter Jefferson married Jane Isham Randolph in 1739, and they had 10 children. One of those children, Thomas, was born in 1743 in Shadwell, Albemarle County. In 1740, Joseph and Rebecca Perrin would have a son, John Charles Perrin. By 1750, our Gates family was probably related by association or ancestry to a whole lot of people living there. We have not even looked at the ancestors of our grandmothers. The Duggar, Perrin, and McWilliams families will figure more in the 1800s. They and the Eppes, Gates, and Robertson families, along with the likes of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Patrick Henry, will struggle through the American Revolution. Also, a family named Hemings